Ancient Nubia is perhaps one of the most popular ancient African civilizations in world history. Nubia, for quite some time, was known as a rival to Egypt, and without question one of the most powerful militaries in Africa. Even though the most recognizable Nubian ruler is King Taharqa today, the greatest of all the Nubian kings, the ruler who initiated the unforgettable African Renaissance, was no doubt his father, King Pi. During the time that King Pi was on the throne in Kush, Egyptian authority and dominion was withering away. Deep rivalries in Egypt ushered in social, political, and religious fragmentation. There was a lot of civil unrest during this time, with various provincial Egyptian and Libyan lords vying for power, but it was a Kushite that proved to be the greatest ruler in the Nile Valley at the time. The Nubian monarch, King Pi, brought back cultural, religious, and civil stability back into North Africa, in what has been coined the African Renaissance. Northern Egypt at the time was divided into independent kingdoms and did not agree on much, but they all seemed to not want the Kushites to rule Upper Egypt, as previous Kushite rulers such as Alara and Kashta were beginning to gain much influence there. King Pi appears to have inherited the throne of Kush from his father, Kashta, who is believed to have been the first to initiate Kush's invasion of Upper Egypt. 4 northern Egyptian kings joined together and planned an attack. King Pi began to see the uprising in the north and was going to put an end to all the division once and for all. However, this mission was not viewed as an invasion, but a calling from the great god himself, Amun, a rescue and restoration of Nile Valley culture. King Pi viewed it as his mission to restore Ma'at to Egypt. He was honor-bound to reunite the two lands, crush the internal conflict, and re-establish the indigenous and true African spiritual significance and power. In order to truly understand his ideological stance, we must first understand a little about ancient oral tradition. One ancient Greek historian named Diodorus suggests that the Nubians may have been the first men on the planet, and he seems to give ear to the idea that it was the Nubians who were the first to institute the worship of the gods, and that Egypt was simply a colony of ancient Nubia. This ancient oral tradition is in direct contrast with what many believe today, but it was considered common knowledge back then, and King Pi was not only inspired by that ancient narrative, but sought to remedy the issue of Egypt's social religious corruption by rescuing the old Nubian colony. That is the African perspective that is often neglected. He took the name Semitawe, meaning uniter of two lands, and rallied his army, yoke the war horses, the best of the stable, draw up the line of battle. Inscribed on a 6-foot square block of pink granite are the details of King Pi's rescue of Egypt. King Pi sent forces north to battle the coalition of 4 kings, instructing his men to go quickly and press on. But when they arrived at Thebes and the temple of Karnak, they were to purify themselves. King Pi told them, "You shall enter the water, you shall bathe in the river, you shall dress in fine linen, unstring the bow, loosen the arrow." Karnak was Amun's temple after all, and since Amun had sent them, they must pay their respects. Grim and determined, King Pi's army marched north. On the Nile, they found many ships coming upstream bearing soldiers, sailors, and commanders, every valiant man of the Northland, equipped with weapons of war. The army from Kush absolutely demolished them. They apparently made a great slaughter that day, and Egyptian troops and their ships were captured. The two enemies clashed on land as well as on sea. Kushite soldiers chased the armies of Egypt and slayed them in their own neighborhoods, laying siege to cities and sending captives back to Kush, and still they pushed northward, doing battle as they went. King Pi wanted to join his army, but first he had to keep his promise to attend the festival of Opet. No king of Egypt could afford to ignore the rituals of the Opet festival because they confirmed the king's right to rule. If King Pi expected the people to accept him as the divine king of Egypt, his place was at Karnak. This was the most important festival of the year. The flawless victory of King Pi over Egypt was not only swift, but filled with honorable and merciful deeds. His victory stela gives us insight into his own personality as he cared deeply about his horses and their condition, making sure that they were taken care of. He forgave his enemies, treating the defeated kings with generosity by appointing them governors of his newly acquired lands. The words of the Kushite king makes a religious proclamation, and he celebrated his victory in the context of divine intervention, because for King Pi, the conquering of Egypt was a holy war. Hear what I did, exceeding the ancestors, I, the king, image of God, living likeness of a tomb, who left the womb marked as ruler, feared by those greater than he. His father knew, his mother perceived, he would be ruler from the egg, the good God, beloved of gods, the son of Re, who acts with his arms, Pi, beloved of Amun. King Pi had no desire to remain in Egypt. Kush was his home. He had fulfilled his holy obligation to Amun and reunited the two lands. Now he could return to the center of his empire, Kush, and rule from there. When he died, he was buried in his homeland just north of the Holy Mountain. King Pi should be recognized as the greatest ruler in Nubian history, as he was the one that successfully reaffirmed ancient Nile Valley religious traditions, temples, and artistic forms, while introducing some unique aspects of Kushite culture. It was during the popular 25th dynasty that the Nile Valley saw the first widespread construction of pyramids since the Middle Kingdom. After the 25th dynasty of Egypt, one can make the argument that Egypt was never truly the same again, as it was constantly in